Final sort of thing we want to talk about with this particular state of play was the return of Silent Hill. We actually got two entries here. Silent Hill, the short message, which is out now. It's a very small, or relatively small rather, free-to-play game created by Hexadrive, which we'll talk about in a minute there, John. And secondly, we saw Silent Hill 2, the new remake, which I think that was a very sort of controversial showing, certainly vis-a-vis the stuff that we've seen already. Let's talk about the short message first of all, John. We've not had the chance to play it yet. I mean, I literally booted it up this morning just to take a very, very quick look at it, and I noticed the Hexadrive logo pop up, which I wasn't expecting. It wasn't in the trailer, but this is potentially really awesome stuff because Hexadrive is like possibly one of the most interesting developers out there with some interesting history behind them.
Yeah, they seem to be kind of rising stars for a while. And in fact, I have a connection with them because they were the ones contracted out to essentially fix the broken remaster of Zone of the Enders 2 on
Yes.
PS3, where Konami took it away from High Voltage Software and had Hexadrive rebuild it completely from scratch, and they did a significantly better job.
Yes.
And that was the second thing ever that I covered on Digital Foundry. So, and then they also went on to do things like the Okami HD remaster on PS3
Right. Okay.
with its very high res rendering. It was 1080p, but it used 4x MSAA.
Yeah.
It was not 4K like some things had suggested, but and I think they did the EX Troopers games, if I recall, at least the PS3 one. I don't know. Are you guys familiar with EX Troopers?
No.
No.
Very underrated. It was an anime style spin-off of the Lost Planet games.
Oh, interesting.
And it was very beautiful looking and really, really cool. And it was probably my favorite Lost Planet game in the end. But it's rather unusual. And I think Hexadrive made that. But I haven't heard a lot from them recently. I'm sure they've been up to stuff. But
Yeah,
I too was surprised to see them pop up here. And I guess based on what they did with Zone of the Enders, they at least already had some sort of relationship forged with Konami.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, did they develop this thing entirely themselves, or were they simply the tech team behind it? Who
It's
can
unclear
say?
at the moment. To be clear, we are doing a standalone video about
Yep.
this.
Tom's working on it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it does look absolutely terrific. Unstable frame rate is unlocked, but, the quality of the visuals is outstanding. I'd like to play more. I've literally just played the first few minutes of it. But it's great that this is. I'm kind of wondering what the commercial angle is. How is it being paid for? It is.
I don't
Oh, it's Silent Hill PT.
But that was a teaser for a project in the works, right? And
Yep.
this is like, what is this? I'm also confused by what they're trying to do here. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Any input on that one there, Oliver?
No, it looks terrific. I've not played it myself, but I mean, I imagine it's probably could it set up anything in Silent Hill 2? I guess it really can't.
No,
Can
I
it?
don't think so.
No. So it is a little bit strange.
Maybe it's some sort of precursor to some new announcement. Who knows? But it is an original work, so that's something to be excited about. But let's talk about the Silent Hill 2 footage, where somewhat bizarrely, Konami decided to focus on a combat-driven trailer, which seems a bit random and a touch inappropriate, possibly. John.
Yeah, so this is a tricky one, and it really gets me thinking about the nature of remakes and such. And so, first of all, before talking about it, I do want to make it clear that I've never had an issue with remakes that take creative liberties because the original still exists, right? I remember when Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes was released, people considered it a travesty.
Right.
And
Yes.
but it didn't take away the original game, right? And I think it was cool to see another vision, however weird it may have been, created. And I appreciate that to some degree. And that's how I'm going to enter the Silent Hill 2 remake, because fundamentally, I don't think they're going to be able to capture the original experience of Silent Hill 2. Because it was a very specific time in games with a very specific set of creators, what they did with that game is something that I'm not sure many other games have ever managed to match. You really get close. It was also something that for many of us, it was that specific time in our lives when we played it, and the impact of what it meant, what the things it explored. It was very special in that regard. But it was also, as much as I enjoyed that experience, it was an experience-driven game, and the core gameplay mechanics arguably weren't actually very good.
Right.
The moment to moment, what you did in that game was not good. The basic combat was very basic, hence the name, and but it was not, the game was not combat focused. Those were minor obstacles, and it was more the fear of the unknown, the darkness that sort of gripped the player. This trailer, in comparison, is extremely action focused in a way that kind of surprised me, where it's like extremely visceral looking. Like, yeah, we got all these physics in here. We got nurses vaulting over the walls. We've got pieces breaking off. I actually thought the combat and stuff looked fun and cool. It just seems slightly out of place in Silent Hill 2. And I'll be curious to see how that actually fits into the greater experience. But what I will say, though, is that visually speaking, I actually think they did a really good job capturing the color palette and visual design of the game, of the original game. More than I expected, actually. It really has that Silent Hill 2 look. The green of James's jacket, that's sort of like forest greens, dull color that he wears, and his hair, it actually reminds me of the CG sequences from Silent Hill 2 in many ways.
Interesting.
So I like what they're doing there. Oh God, I just saw a QTE scene in there. That stuff. Yeah. So yeah, I'm going in with an open mind, but we'll see.
Isn't the sort of case, I mean, there was the case that the original had a really firmly established aesthetic, which was kind of, how would you describe it? Sort of indistinct, grimy, dirty. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And this is kind of pristine rendering almost.
So
it looks very different. The atmosphere just feels different.
So one of the challenges that I always felt with Silent Hill, and this is very tough to overcome, is that Silent Hill was a product of the SDTV era. And I think the artists very specifically leaned into it in a way. They took advantage of that technology to create something that plays with the imagination. I remember the very first time I ever saw Pyramid Head, who thankfully did not appear in this yet. Didn't see him. We'll see what happens with it. The first time you see him, he's behind these bars down a hallway. Your flashlight just captures a little glint off of his pyramid head. But because of the low resolution of the standard definition television, the pitch blackness of the scene, you visually can't make out what it is. You just see a distorted figure and then it goes away. And it's those types of moments, those little teases, and the way that your brain can't necessarily understand what you're looking at that really makes it special. And I think that's actually really difficult to almost impossible to achieve when you're dealing with really high resolutions and modern giant 4K TVs. I don't know how you solve that problem in an effective way. And there is no horror game in my experience personally that has ever managed to recapture the feeling of playing Silent Hill 2 or these old Silent Hill games on like a CRT.
Right.
It's so, yeah, I'll be curious to see how it goes.
Mm-hmm. Anything to add to that, Oliver?
Yeah, I thought the focus on combat was a little bit odd. I did think it looked a little bit limp, like the guns don't necessarily kick back too rapidly. The muzzle flashes, didn't look too satisfying.
Well, Oliver, it's Silent Hill. We're just...
Yeah, I know. I know. But it does seem like there's an increased focus on combat here, or at least that's what they're trying to communicate to us. And that did look a little bit weird to me. I think it still looks great. I think the rendering looks awesome. Maybe not to quite the same caliber as the earlier showing, but this is gameplay footage for the most part and not cutscene footage. That's to be expected. But yeah, I think that it's understandable that people didn't really jibe with this presentation as much, but maybe that's just an artifact of the way this was presented, and maybe in the context of the full game it will be a better presentation.
John, what do you think of the animation? Because it kind of, there were certain reminders here of the Metal Gear Solid 3 remaster slash remake that they're doing, where it sort of feels like the animation is of a certain age and it's surrounded by these higher quality visuals.
I can kind of see that, but I mean, I don't think they're taking original animations or anything. It's
No.
clearly all brand new stuff, and it's much more complex animation than what was in the original, arguably. Well, it's technically very different, though. Again, we get into the whole interpretation thing as to
Yeah.
what they're trying to do. But yeah, it has a strange look to it where it does look rather modern in terms of rendering features, but something about it does feel a little stiff, which, again, that's Silent Hill. So it's a difficult game to discuss for exactly that reason. I think.
So it's a hands-on scenario then.
I need to play this to understand, and I want to play it and look at this game. I would like to cover this game for sure, because I think there's going to be a lot of room both for looking at the game itself, but also putting into perspective versus the original experience.